Implausible Nature now has dice. That's right, you can get these awesome D6s made by our partner, Baron of Dice. These custom dice have the Implausible Nature logo on the 6 side and also come with square corners, which means they will roll more evenly than rounded corner dice. Head on over to baronofdice.com and use discount code IN40K to get a discount on your order and support us at the same time. Check out his full collection of dice for all your gaming needs with the link down in the description.
Welcome to Implausible Nature, your home for all things Black Templar. On today's video, as the title suggests, we are talking Terminators, and we have our very good friend here, David, with us today. He often talks about Terminators, especially in our Discord, and there's a lot of questions that people are asking about Terminators. We're kind of here to talk about the tactics of using them and why we think they might be one of the best units that we can field for Black Templars. It's not a super common thing, but we're here to change the meta and figure out how to use them, why they are good, and what makes them good specifically for Black Templars, because I think we have some things that we can do with them that no one else can. So to get us started, kind of briefly, by now you probably know what their stats are like, but we'll just kind of briefly go over them. So Terminator's got a pretty good glow up in 10th edition. Their invul increased from a basic 5 up to a 4 up. They still retain their 2+ save. They have 3 wounds. They're now to 5. And then when you take the assault variant, you option for a Storm Shield and Thunderhammer, which gives you an extra wound because of that Storm Shield, because it used to give you a better invul save, but now the invul is the same across the board, so instead you're getting an extra wound, making them 4 wounds, which is pretty amazing, and we'll talk about that as well in this video. So unfortunately, despite this glow up, a lot of people aren't really taking them. The shooting variant, the tactical Terminators, as people call them, their guns are rather lackluster. Their power fists are solid, but they just don't have quite the damage output that a lot of people, I think, want from a unit that costs as much as Terminators do. You're paying a lot of points for their durability. And the same thing with the Thunderhammers. There's Strength 8 isn't what it used to be anymore. It's got a lot of weak points, especially into vehicles. So we're going to talk about how we can mitigate some of that stuff on today's video. So let's get started. David, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you like about Terminators and why they are a good unit specifically for Black Templars?
Sure. Appreciate this conversation. I know I get asked a lot about Terminators. Every time I post a list or show a result, I'm getting asked about this. So now I'll be able to quickly link this video and be like, hey, just watch this video. So
just watch this, yeah.
So I appreciate this platform. So most people know that I've been using Terminators since the start of 10th. At the start of 10th, I was using them with the captain specifically. We had a lot of options with the captains, but then they nerfed the captain ability in terms of what stratagems were free with that. So we had to look towards something else. And you spoke on something that was really important, which was their strength 8 weapons. And I know that kind of takes away from some of the damage output potential on paper. And so I'll just kind of jump in with what leader I attached to my Terminators, specifically Assault Terminators. Early 10th, I was using a captain, but now I find myself using a chaplain because chaplains offer a little bit more resistance for the anvil side, for field of pain on mortals, but really, really important is that +1 to wound. And +1 to wound in this meta environment right now is a real premium because there's enough out there that can be -1 to wound. There's a lot of toughness, a lot of stuff that's greater than toughness 8 that we're going to be attacking, and so that usually goes a long way. So anything less than toughness 8, you're wounding on 2s. 8, you're still wounding on 3s, and then 9 all the way up to 15, you're still wounding on 4s actually. And if by chance we ever see a toughness 16 thing, we're still beginning wounding on 5s. So that's why the chaplain is probably my number one leader to attach to the unit. Um, and um, and I will say, just as a quick asterisk to that, the ancient with a banner, we're starting to see that in the meta a little bit more. And I'm also like tempted to use that a little bit more often because the OC is really important. And giving up that +1 to wound while gaining some significant OC is probably something that we're going to see a little bit more often. But the final thing that's really important for whatever leader you attach to an Assault Terminator group is 10 Hauser Bones. It's really a big
Little
reason
T-bones.
why, yeah, T-Bones have been one of my favorite Warlord traits since 9th edition. It's just kind of a cool name, and also is a really cool defensive buff. And 10th edition is no exception. And in fact, it's extremely powerful. And for those who don't know, when you attach T-Bones to a leader, which is attached to a unit, the leader itself gets a 5-up feel no pain, and any damage that's sent to him is cut in half. I take that back. I think the 5-up feel no pain is only activated when you're running Uphold the
Yeah.
Honor of the Emperor for the whole
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah.
So slight correction there. Leader gets half damaged, but if you're using Uphold the Honor, the unit gets 5-up feel no pain, and candidly, most of us are using Uphold the Honor by default. And if you're running a Terminator style, a Terminator forward list like this, you're definitely going to want to run Uphold, because what we'll talk about later is how you leverage Fervent Acclamation to make Terminators even more powerful, especially in their charge phase. So that's a little bit on the
Yeah.
leadership side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree 100%. I mean, I think getting that +1 to wound from the Terminator Chaplain is really handy. A lot of people lamented Thunderhammers, and, rightfully so, when their 10th edition stats dropped. They used to be damage 3, now they're damage 2. Their AP remained the same at 2, whereas a lot of other things like Power Fist and whatnot lost AP. And they also only remain strength 8, which, I mean, I don't think we really expected them to get much, more. But they didn't get like anti-vehicle or anything like that. Like Chain Fists have anti-vehicle. So going into, and they have fewer attacks. I mean, Terminators have 3 attacks apiece. That's not a lot in today's meta, especially when Primaris Crusaders are swinging 5 chainsword attacks. It definitely reduced the quality of their attacks, and that +1 to wound, as you pointed out, anything that's tough 9 or above, which is the new vehicle and monster toughness stat line, is now you're going to be wounding it on 4s, which is pretty much what you were wounding the toughest things in 9th edition on as well. So that's a huge buff in and of itself. And then the durability buff. Like, a lot of people forget that mortal wounds are still a thing, and having a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds is pretty clutch. And having the 5-up versus a 6-up from Uphold is really powerful. You mentioned you using Assault Terminators, and that's primarily what we're going to be talking about today, because Assault Terminators are key here, and the main reason you want them is the Storm Shield, right? That 4th wound. 4 wound models really screws up people's damage output. A lot of weapons are either damage 2 or damage 3, and you need at least 2 attacks on each one of those, assuming you fail everything, which you're probably not going to kill a 4-wound Terminator. So that makes them that much more durable than a 3-wound model.
Yeah, but I think that Righteous Crusaders is really the key to this detachment, honestly, because you have the Uphold, but not only that, you're having that T-Bones, as you mentioned, to give it that extra durability, and you key in our Chaplain to give it that 4-up mortal. You got the normal invulnerable saves of the 4-ups. Then you got, on top of that, the Feel No Pain, plus all of the other tools that we have in close combat, which you're going to get to. before, the only thing that was more durable, in my opinion, was Greenwing. But now they can only take 5-man. So what is there out there that is going to be out more durable than a Righteous Crusader upholded Terminator block? Nothing comes to
Not a lot.
mind.
I can't
Yeah,
think of
when
anything off the top of my head.
okay. Yeah, when I summarize my list to my opponent, I talk about the Terminators almost as if it's of course it's one unit, but almost kind of give them to imagine a single model that has 47 wounds, a 2-up save, 4-up invul, 5-up feel no pain, 4-up feel no pain against mortals, with 30 attacks, devastating wounds, +1 to wound. When you go through it and describe it as such, yeah, it's 500 points, but it's pretty disgusting. There's not much more in the game that's intimidating in terms of the anvil side. All that said, you have to respect that they're not invincible. So
Yeah,
I don't want people to
absolutely.
get the idea that, okay, I can just put this
What?
anywhere.
What do you mean they're not invincible? Of course they're invincible.
You can't just listen. Matt Laura has absolutely terminated my Terminators through a critical mistake I made. So they're not invincible, but they're pretty. They have to be respected in themselves. So opponents have to make some pretty important decisions on how they're going to handle them.
Yeah, and one of the other things that really you barely touched on, but I think is so important about the unit, is a lot of ways, there are a lot of countered armies uh, out there that have really durable units. One of the counters is just to eliminate the character that's with them. Get rid of the character, and the unit falls over like a wet noodle. We have a character that is a legitimate character with its own defensive stats, with all of those anvil tactics, plus it's half damage. So you're not sniping it. You're anything that's in close combat with it that has precision is going to be a massive reduction to the damage. And I mean, good
And
luck.
7 wounds too with a shield.
Yeah, if you take the shield. Plus, it's a chaplain, which is on theme for us, which is awesome in and of itself. But also, and maybe perhaps most importantly of all, the classic Terminator chaplain is probably the coolest model GW's ever made. So, I'm so happy that I've had that model painted for years, and I love that model. I love the paint job I did on it. And I'm so glad I could have put that guy on the table again, because he sat on the shelf for ages. So the fact that the chaplain is not only a great option for this, but probably the best option, makes it just that much cooler for me.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this at the beginning. I don't want to get away from this because this might start to creep up, even in my own list. I'm considering it. Don't discount the Ancient with Tinhauser Bones. You're sacrificing a little offensive power, a little bit of extra wounds, but what you're gaining is extra OC. And I think as this meta starts to play out a little bit more, people are going to start to realize that OC is going to be a real premium. And so having 2 OC Terminators, a blob of 10 of them, having 20 OC on an objective could be really critical at certain points of the game.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, he's probably the only ancient in the entire codex who is worth a damn. The rest of them are just atrocious. Not only is it a cool kit bash opportunity, but even besides the OC, he does have a decent ability. He has Keep the Banner High, which I think everyone probably forgets that he has this. Keep the Banner High while this model is leading a unit. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll if that unit is below its starting strength, and add 1 to the wound roll as well if that unit is below half strength. So while you won't get that +1 to wound until you're below half strength, you do get +1 to hit, which is pretty important because they hit on 4s. So getting to those Thunder Hammers to hit on 3s means you're going to have that many more attacks, even if you have that many fewer wounds. I'm pretty sure the math on that, I would have to do the math because I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's essentially the same. You get that many more hits versus that many more wounds. So, and if you're targeting your Oath unit, your Oath target, then it's going to be that much more deadly with it too. So those are kind of some options as far as the characters go. Why the unit itself is a really great unit and a really great take. So, David, tell us a little bit about. You mentioned teching into Fervent Acclamation for them and to give them some offensive power. And this is something I hadn't really considered until you pointed it out to me, and I went and did the math, and I'm like, man, you're right. This is actually pretty good damage output, surprisingly. And I used it in multiple games, and I was very impressed by how much damage they actually can put out. So tell us a little bit about what you kind of uncovered as the combo to use with them.
Sure. Yeah. When this first came out, yeah, hitting on fours used to be. It was like in the back of our mind, we're like, man, that's rough. Against an O target, it's a little bit better. But turns out Black Templars Righteous Crusade again has some really unique synergies that can make the damage output pretty obscene, actually. So a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm going after an O target, of course, something pretty hefty that needs to be moved off the board, and I'm going to charge it with my Terminators. But in my command phase, I'm going to run a Fervent Acclamation, and I have to say 90% of the times I'm running sustained hits. The reason why is if you're going after an O target and you've got all your Terminators, ignoring the Chaplain for a second here, that's 30 attacks. The math comes out with the sustained hits against an O target and all your rerolls, that 30 attacks will turn into 30 hits. With the exploding sixes and the rerolls and the exploding sixes from the rerolls, on average, you should have about 30 hits on that. And then when you think about the wound output with the +1 to wounds from the Chaplain specifically, those 30 hits that go through against most things that are out there, you're going to do a great example is a Baneblade with an Engineer with a 4-up Invul. If you're towing the average on the mass, you should still kill a Baneblade as long as you hit the average, and maybe the average goes to your favor just a little bit. If anything, then maybe the Chaplain cleans it up. But think about that. The Baneblade's toughness, 13, 16 wounds? You're going to be doing easily 10 mortals right out of the 10 devastating wounds right out of the gate at the end, amongst all the saves that they're going to have to do. There's not much in this game that can survive that. A great unclean's even worse off because you can run Abhor the Witch for the anti-psyker 4-up, and then you're just dumping devastating wounds into any psyker unit. Magnus, a Catan. Even with your half damage, you're still just dumping a sheer volume of wounds going through. There's not much that can survive a Terminator attack when it's fully synergized with Fervent Acclamation and either the sustained hits or the lethal hits, combined with a +1 to wound.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that was something that I did every time I went with sustained hits. Something else you can do if the target doesn't have an invul, because the AP2 most times will hit their invul, which is what you want. But if the target doesn't have an invul and you want to ensure its death, you can spend another CP and pop Crusader's Wrath and get an extra AP and make them AP3. Which really will just clean up anything that they're going into. And they're good into elite infantry too. Anything that's less than tough 8, you're going to wound on 2s, which is pretty impressive, especially given all the tough 6 and tough 7 and tough 5 stuff out there now. Being able to wound that stuff on 2s is pretty gross. So it allows you to really kind of do what you need to. And the cool thing about those strats is if you don't need them, you don't need them. You can save the CP, right? It's not something that you're factoring into their cost. It's an opportunity cost at that time, which is great.
And I think one of the things that are really not mentioned by many people that has actually come into play a couple of times is when you're going against your big baddie opponent list, they have to take that battle shock test when you charge in. And if they fail that, they're not using any stratagems to protect that unit, which has come into play. Or if it somehow survives, you take that objective from them.
Yeah. So going along with a lot of the questions that I see David getting asked in the Discord, how do you play them? So What do you do for them for deployment? Something you mentioned before we started recording is, a lot of people complain, oh, well, they're slow, right? Well, we have some tools for that. Deployment matters a lot for that. So tell us a little bit about deployment and how you utilize them on the table to get them where they need to be. Because obviously we want them in melee or sitting on a objective, forcing our opponent to come to us.
Yeah, so I think by default, a lot of people, and I'm the same way. We want them in deep strike. That mystique of where they might be landing, it sits in the head of the opponent rent free, and that can help control the board a little bit. And remember, we have a teleport homer token that we're putting down, and that for anybody who doesn't know, as long as you deploy or rapid ingress within 3 inches of that, it doesn't cost you anything to rapid ingress. And that's really the important part of that is within. And so some people are tempted to bring that teleport homer really far forward, closer to the opponent. For me, I tend to be a little bit more defensive. I will want that where I'm probably going to put the Terminators on the board anyways, just to get free rapid ingress. Or I might use that to tempt an opponent to stay away from an objective while the entire time I was going to put the Terminator somewhere else. So to kind of go back a little bit, usually they're in deep strike. The only time they're not in deep strike is where I don't feel like I want them, where I feel like I want them on the board by round 2. Like I want to go into round 2 with them on the board. Because you can't deep strike them on round 1, of course, or on the opponent's side of round 1. So a great example is World Eaters or Orcs. I do not want them in my face without my Terminators on the board. So I will have them on the board right out of the gate. So there are instances where you're going to start them on the board, or if they just don't have any shooting threats. If they don't have any shooting threats, put them on the board. They're not going to shoot them off. So, but to speak to the speed of Terminators and how you can make them faster, first off, of course, using rapid ingress to get them, more than 5 inches away from your deployment zone, right there, that's an advantage. We have a stratagem called Devout Push. It's probably one of my personal favorites. If you don't know how Devout Push works, but if you shoot a Black Templar unit and you kill at least 1 model, we can move for 1 CP up to D6 inches. For Terminators, that's up to 5. So during their shooting phase, you can get some additional movement out of that. And then the final thing that really adds to that is, and I will give Sasha Ellenkraut and my buddy Mark Benning, he plays Tyranids. I'll give them a lot of credit for teaching me this, but really leveraging your movement to the maximum possible when you're doing a charge, meaning using the full breadth of your charge results, using the consolidation and the pile in to its full results. That it's a great way of extending the Terminators, and candidly, the size of the brick itself. Like you're talking, what is that? You're talking 11 models, and so when you're extending 11 models out with all of these synergies, you find that Terminators can move across the board rather quickly, from deep striking above 5 inches from the deployment zone, charging a full, sometimes you get lucky and roll hot with an 11-inch, 10-inch charge, then piling it for another 3 inches, and then consolidating after that, after the fact, and all of a sudden you're halfway up the board after your first charge. It's really deceptively fast, and it usually catches people off guard.
Yeah,
And
I think a lot of people are not thinking about stuff like Devout Push, and you mentioned this to me in a previous time we chatted, where you will mention, oh well, I have Devout Push. If you shoot me, I can move forward up to D6 inches, and one of two things is going to happen. Your opponent's going to be like, well, I think I'm okay with that, and the consequences of it, cool, I get free movement. Or they may just be like, I'm not going to shoot him at all. Cool. I'm cool with that too.
yeah,
Something else that you can do with them is advance them. If you need to, and they don't need to do an action, and you're not planning on charging them, you just need them on a point or move blocking something that wants to get to some other target of yours, advance them. And you can get a little extra speed that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's numerous ways to get around that 5 inch in Righteous Crusader. Yeah, some people are saying, well, what about Gladius? Yeah, I mean, there is that assault and charge that you do have access to, but you're going to lose the anvil portion of the list, I think, doing that for the potential of a one trick pony assault charge or advanced charge there. But it's ultimately it's something that your opponent has to respect in the movement phase. It's going to dictate that whole side of the board. And I like the fact that you mentioned that you can use the token as a kind of a decoy to kind of play mind games with your opponent, throwing it on a one flank objective. And when you're totally planning on doing something else, because they're going to avoid that objective because they don't want anything to do with it. And all of a
Or
sudden,
they're
you're
going
right
to
in their
rush it
face.
to try to block you
Yeah.
from getting be able to use it, because you still have to be more than 9 inches away.
Yep.
So if they surround your token, which they can't do anything to it, it's just a token. But if they get close enough to your token that you're not going to be able to deep strike, they may think, haha, I've stopped your free deep strike. That's cool. I wasn't going over there anyway. I'm going over here.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, what? Oh, crap. You know,
Now, what I find actually is, Alex, you're hitting right on the head there. Is from my perspective, when I see them doing that, a lot of opponents will overextend themselves just because they want to stop the token. Like they they don't necessarily understand the threat that is behind what's going to deploy there. They know it's dangerous, and that's all they know. It's just dangerous. I've got to stop it. And so they'll overextend and they'll put an important unit really close to that token, and I'm fine with that. You've got to make sure you're playing to the case of them shutting it down or you not using it at all. And if you're doing it that way, you will be fine with them extending a unit close to that token, especially if it's on your side of your board. I mean, on your half. Great, you gave me a unit for me to do something to attack in with my sword bros, or shoot off the board with my lancer, or maybe I still will deploy my Terminators 9 inches away from that unit, and perfect. So yeah,
Yeah, it
you're
was
right.
kind of funny you said that. I was like, you know what? That's perfect synergy with the sword bros to be able to jump out of Impulsor and kill a unit that they just, sacrifice to the God Emperor.
You keep an impulsor with Hellbrick and some sword bros about 10 inches away from that token. They will take that bait, and you will be able to deploy those sword bros right out. You've got 3 inches of movement right there, and it turns into sometimes a 9 up to 6 inch charge. Like it's a whole thing. Alex, I'm sorry, Bob, you're 100% right there. You can really bait out a critical unit that gets overextended because they just have this fear of, I've got to shut down this token somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So any other, as far as utilizing them, do you target specific, sections of the board? Like, are you looking to go after their biggest thing, or how are you utilizing them as far as where you're putting them on the board in relation to the opponent's units?
Yeah, I'm finding myself playing a lot more like I'm trying to remember. I started playing in, was it 2022 Atlantic City? So that would have been towards the middle of ninth edition, where we had Stranglehold. So the idea was a hero hammer the center, and you could just win by getting all the points by holding the center with a big blob like that. I've been kind of going back towards that a little bit. The reason why is we've talked about all the synergies that are available, and we know it's an anvil unit that can control an objective. But a lot of times I'm finding these missions reward you for controlling the center one way or the other. I can go on and on about that, but I'm finding myself being rewarded for controlling the center again. And the other unit we didn't talk about is a lieutenant with combi weapon. The beauty of that unit is you can take an objective and reroll wound rolls of 1 on that. That adds more to the output of those Terminators. And when you select, let's say, the center objective and say, you know what, that's going to be my choice objective, I'm going to play my Terminators there. And if they've got good coverage, the terrain's really reasonable. If it's like a GW standard, they're not going to get shot off the board necessarily. That objective's yours. And one of two things happen. The opponent will completely ignore it, which is optimal, right? 500 points is dedicated to keeping an objective in the center that's yours, or they have to commit everything. They genuinely typically go and commit absolutely everything to try to kill the unit, and that's fine as well because you're still controlling the flow of the game,
Yep.
and it's all within. It's yours to lose at that point. So to answer your question a little bit more directly, I'm usually concentrating on a objective that's really critical, and that's synergized with my lieutenant with combi weapon to hold down the game.
Yeah, and if your opponent makes a mistake and doesn't commit enough to try to take out that unit, now you're just picking their units apart one by
Yeah.
one.
The most common mistake that opponents will do is they will put some sort of infantry near an objective that I want to control, and I'm going to time up with the Terminators. And you know what? I'm going to hope I don't kill the infantry. You know why? Because they're not going to kill my Terminators, and I'm just going to use what is that
No
stratagem?
escape.
No escape.
No escape is wonderful.
It's a
I love
50-50
that
shot.
strat.
It's turned against me in the worst times possible. It's my one loss against the Grand Tournament, and the Grand Tournament in Christmas was because I failed that. But if you succeed on a no escape, all of a sudden they can't do anything, and they're not going to try to charge those Terminators, and they can't shoot at them because their infantries are tied up there. So look for that mistake. If they want to bait you with some infantry and you don't kill them, you can still control that side of the board or that objective because of no escape.
Well, and no escape is great too now because it's not just a spend a CP for a 50% chance. It's spend a CP for a 50% chance, and even if you don't get it, and they still want to fall back, now they're taking a desperate escape test for every single model in the unit, and that's a 33% chance to just kill each model that rolls it. That happened to me against my friend with his Votan, and I failed the roll, and he decided to fall back anyway, and he had like 5 guys left, and I killed 4 of them, or he killed 4 of them, I guess, with his bad rolls. So that's a threat, and if it's an expensive unit for them, that's a pretty big risk. 33% chance to just lose a model for each model, it can be something, make them change their mind depending on what unit it is. So yeah, it's a great stratagem.
Yeah, no, honestly, I feel that now that I've gotten to where we are in 10th edition, I've played dozens and dozens of games now against a multitude of different opponents. If we're playing Terminators, we really, and really, if we're playing Righteous Crusaders, I should reverse that a little bit. If we're playing Righteous Crusaders, we need to go all in on what it does well, and that is durability across the board and leveraging the tools on specific units like the Terminators to be able to do some damage to select pieces of the board. And I think, to summarize what we've kind of been talking about, I think Terminators are the perfect unit in Black Templars, Righteous Crusaders, because they do have the offensive potential if you put that chaplain on them, and lesser so the ancient, but you can throw stratagems on them as well to up their ante, whether depending on how much you want to spend and how much you've saved your CP. Yeah, but they're so hard to deal with. They're not invincible, as we've stressed, but they are as close to invincible as you can probably get, with reliability. Now, obviously, it's a 5-up is a 5-up. It's still only 33%, but you topple that with the 4 wounds each. You got the invul. You probably got cover on whatever it is that you're getting shot. So, armor of content if you really want that. So, if they really push through and they're really throwing some AP at you, okay, now we're at our invul. Oh, now we got our feel no pains as well. Oh, you got mortals? Okay, we got something for that too.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can be in cover and getting shot by something that's AP2, cool. I'll take some AOC because now I'm still saving on 2s. Which is just gross. So, overall, I think um, used correctly, they are definitely a unit that to be reckoned with, and a unit that can dominate the flow of a game. But like David said, you can't just throw them out there and expect them to do something, right? You have to be tactical with how you utilize them, and make sure you're utilizing them appropriately. So
Yeah, I'd just say if you are a player who's wanting to use these, and this is a video that you're watching to learn how to use these, if you forget everything we talked about today, here's what I want you to remember. You need to practice with them. I can see a lot of new players or even veteran players picking up Terminators, Assault Terminators, running T-Bones, thinking about all these synergies and be like, these are too slow. I can't get these synergies. I can't get the momentum with these. I can't seem to control the board. You got to practice. If you continue to practice with this unit, and it's the case for any unit, let's be candid with that. But Terminators especially, if you continue to practice, that's what's going to help build the reps to make these effective. Don't assume you're going to plant these in the center and then win the game. Otherwise, some Tau player is going to just drop all his crisis suits and all his tanks at you and just blast them off the board. Make sure you practice with them consistently and stick to them. When you fail, just stick to it and keep going at it.
Yeah, I mean, because they are 500 points. So if you misuse this unit, then you're severely gimped. I mean, let's be honest. You could take 2 full aggressor squads plus some other stuff with them in other units, or a whole slew of sword brothers and impulsors and a land raider, a whole bunch of things that you can take for the cost of the Terminators. So you can't throw them out there. I've played games with them now. I didn't really actively really buy into them at the beginning of 10th edition. I was more on the Sword Brethren, as the viewers probably know. Converted a few people along the way, including a few other of our fellow competitors on YouTube. But yeah, I've been playing them, and they're not easy to use. I will admit that. I mean, they are durable. They do the things that you need, but they're not easy to use. So you definitely want to practice. That's with any list, really. But even they have all these synergies and durability, like you mentioned. It's, your opponent, if they're good, they're probably going to do everything they can to avoid that. And in my experience, let me have the objective and concentrate literally the rest of their army on capturing the other center objectives. And if they can do that effectively better than we can still lose that game. If we're only capturing 2 objectives and they're getting 3, or 4 and we're only getting 3, I mean, we're still going to lose the game.
In fact, I think it's important to bring up and point out to players, what do you do if you face these Terminators? If you were on the other side, what would you do? And I'll tell you right now, I'm either ignoring them completely.
Yep.
Let them do their thing. Great, because the reason why, in my mind, I've got 2,000 points. You're dedicating 500 points to an objective. I would rather take 2,000 versus the rest of your 1,500 and fight that than try to even deal with them. So I might just ignore them if it's an advantage. Or I'm going to wait until there's an opportunity to make sure I take them all out in one go, one fell swoop. I'm not going to try to play around and pick them off. I'm going to try to commit to get them off the board in one go. And I will say, I've lost some important matches. I mentioned Matt Laura. I lost against him at Nova. I lost against Brian Zhu at the Christmas GT. That was my last Grand Tournament loss, and they both did a really great job. And I'll tell you how I lost. Matt Laura, I went to go against an Oath target, Necron Warriors, I think it was. I made the mistake of, he's got 2 units. I go after this one with my Terminators. I made the mistake of charging so aggressively that he was able to heroically intervene with the second unit and split off my Terminator group. So only half of them could go into the Oath target and only half of them go into the other target. Very ineffective. They end up getting killed. And then with Brian at the last UT, he was playing Tau. Fantastic player, by the way. He's a Tau specialist. I failed the Desperate Escape. I engaged the breachers, just as I said. The intention was to engage the breachers, force a drop down of the crisis suits, 50-50 shot to see if I can keep the breachers on me so that on my turn I could charge and kill off his crisis suits. I failed the coin toss, and he was able to dedicate all his crisis suits and all of his tanks and every other shooting he had to absolutely dump into the Terminators and kill them in one turn. So a little bit of perspective on the other side of the table there for you too.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the video, guys. We kind of gone over the different synergies, how to use them, why they're good, who to pair them with, offensive and defensive capabilities. We definitely want to thank David again for coming on and giving his experience with them. Hopefully, this video will help you to utilize Terminators. If you want to. I know we have some very dedicated people on the server who are super interested in running Terminators, and hopefully this video helps you guys out to really kind of utilize them to the best of their capabilities, and hopefully win you some games. So once again, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you check out our Discord and our Patreon. We got a lot of great Patreon benefits, including exclusive roles and dice and things like that. So come check us out. Make sure you click all the YouTube algorithm button thingies. And until next time, keep on crusading.